The key didn't turn. I paused, jiggled it once, then again. Nothing. My suitcase rested beside me on the porch, the same porch I'd stained myself 5 summers ago when Carter said he wanted to host Thanksgiving here one day. The door opened before I could knock. "Mom," Carter said, eyebrows lifting, "we didn't expect you back yet. I told you I'd come home early if Joy's stitches healed well." He didn't answer. He stepped aside, but only slightly. Emily appeared behind him, arms crossed, her expression tight. Carter cleared his throat. "So while you were gone, we made some changes." I looked past him. The living room had been rearranged. My bookshelves were gone. A giant cream sectional took their place. The scent of fresh paint floated into the doorway, something floral and faintly chemical. "Changes," I repeated. He rubbed the back of his neck. "We finalized the transfer. Emily's name is on the deed now." I blinked. "You mean the house I own?" "Well, technically, you gave us temporary power of attorney before you left, remember?" Emily chimed in too quickly. "It just made sense to consolidate everything now that we're married." My hands tightened around the handle of my suitcase. "Where's my chair?" Emily tilted her head toward the curb. "Oh, that old thing? We put it out. It didn't really match the new layout." I stepped inside. The walls were bare where my photographs used to hang. The kitchen had new bar stools. The coffee mugs were gone. The whole place smelled like someone else's life. Carter touched my arm. "We set up the guest room for you." "I don't need a guest room," I said quietly. "You're just visiting, Mom." I stared at him, trying to find the boy who used to fall asleep on my shoulder after school, who once cried when I missed a spelling bee. But he was gone, and in his place was a man who thought he could quietly take my life and label it a gift. I walked down the hallway, suitcase wheels bumping softly across my own floors. Emily led the way down the hall like a concierge giving a tour. "We figured this room would be cozier for you," she said, pushing open the door at the end. "It's got good light in the morning." Carter stayed in the hallway, pretending to check something on his phone. The room was cold. A carry-on-sized suitcase sat neatly on the bed, Emily's, not mine. A new duvet covered the mattress, beige and impersonal. In the corner, an air mattress leaned against the wall, half deflated. There was no closet space, no drawers, just a folding chair with a blanket draped over it. "You didn't leave any of my things?" I asked, scanning the walls. "Oh, right. We moved a few boxes to the garage," she said. "But Carter said you didn't need much day-to-day. You travel light, right?" She smiled like she was being helpful. Not polite, not warm, just transactional. "I used to read in here when you were pregnant," I said mostly to myself. This was the sewing room. Emily blinked at me, then gave a little nod and turned back toward the hallway. "We're doing Thai for dinner," she called over her shoulder. "But if you're tired—" I didn't answer. I stood in the center of the room for a long moment, trying to breathe through the silence. The walls felt narrower, the air thinner. Down the hall I heard Carter's voice, low, muffled, probably on the phone. I wondered if he was telling someone I'd arrived, or asking how to explain it all when I pushed back. Or maybe he wasn't thinking of me at all. I sat on the edge of the mattress. It hissed slightly under my weight. The guest room. In my house. No wedding photo on the dresser, no coffee mug by the window, not even a photo of Carter and me from graduation, the one I'd kept in every home I'd ever lived in. I stood back up. I'd seen enough. I walked to the garage. If my things were in boxes, I needed to see what was left. The garage was cleaner than I remembered. Too clean. The workbench was gone, the pegboard empty. In its place stood plastic bins labeled with masking tape in Emily's handwriting. Miski, linens, old kitchen, and one that just read Mom. I crouched and opened that one first. Inside, my college sweatshirt, faded from years of Carter borrowing it for school spirit days. A chipped mug from my first logistics job. A framed photo of me holding Carter at 6 months old, standing in front of our first apartment, the one with the broken radiator and the mice. I set the photo aside and sat back on my heels. They called this their forever home. Now Emily said it like it had always been hers, like she had picked the tiles in the kitchen or stayed up until 2 a.m. painting the hallway trim because Carter was sick and we couldn't afford a contractor. They didn't know the nights I'd come home from warehouse shifts so tired I couldn't untie my boots, that I'd spent a year eating pasta and eggs so I could pay down the mortgage faster, that Carter's college tuition came from the ring I sold, the one his father gave me when I still believed we'd grow old together. This house had been my quiet promise to myself. You survived, and now you get to rest. But I didn't rest. I made it a home for Carter and Emily when they were broke and too proud to admit it. I told them they could stay a while. That was 2 years ago. I never charged them rent, not once. I paid the property taxes. I left the pantry stocked. I left them everything. And now I was the one with no key, no chair, no room. I packed the photo back into the bin, but I kept the mug. I didn't need much, but I needed that. When I stood, I saw the file box on the top shelf, the one I hadn't touched in years, the one with the deed. I pulled the file box down and set it on the garage floor. Dust clung to the lid, undisturbed since the year Carter graduated. Inside were folders marked taxes, warranties, insurance, and finally, home. I opened it. There it was, my original deed still in my name, dated, notarized, whole. I flipped through every page just to be sure. No updated title, no transfer form with my signature. I remembered giving Carter temporary power of attorney before I left, just in case something urgent came up while I was with Joy. A formality, nothing more. But apparently, he had used it to file a transfer request behind my back. When I called the county office the next morning, I used my calmest voice. I asked if any changes had been recorded. Yes, the clerk said. The title was submitted for transfer 2 weeks ago. It's flagged as a gift from parent to child, non-taxable. Was it finalized? I asked. There was a pause. It's pending, awaiting final verification of signature. I exhaled through my nose. It won't be verified, I said, because I never signed it. That afternoon, a friend from my book club, Linda, helped me contact a title specialist. Over coffee at her kitchen table, I explained everything. That's fraud, she said, not blinking. And if Emily's trying to borrow against the house, it gets worse. Linda made 2 phone calls. By evening, I had confirmation Emily had submitted an application for a home equity line of credit listing herself as owner. They didn't just try to erase me, they tried to profit off me. I thought of the couch in the living room, the new art on the walls, all the ways they'd made the house theirs, all the ways they believed I'd go quietly. I didn't call them that night. Instead, I found my lawyer's card in the bottom of my wallet, right where I'd tucked it years ago after a noise complaint dispute with a neighbor. I stared at it for a long time, then I dialed. Her voice was brisk but kind, the same as I remembered. I need to file a formal dispute, I said. Someone tried to transfer ownership of my home without consent. Do you have the original title? She asked. Yes, and I never signed anything to release it. By evening, Judith had filed a notice of dispute with the county and submitted documentation to block the pending mortgage application. A lien had been placed, preventing any loan from going through until ownership was settled, which in this case meant never. It was the kind of paperwork battle I used to train junior staff on. Fast, quiet, airtight. I moved slowly through the house after that, past the rooms they'd redecorated, past the kitchen they'd modernized without asking. My pantry now held glass jars labeled in Emily's handwriting. Quinoa, almonds, chia seeds. The coffee tin I kept under the cabinet had been pushed to the back, but it was still there. My mug sat on the second shelf behind rows of spotless wine glasses. I brewed a cup and sat at the kitchen table. The deed rested beside me. My thumb traced the edge of the paper as steam curled toward the ceiling. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. I felt steady. They'd be home soon, probably holding takeout and small talk, thinking nothing had changed. I sipped slow and deliberate, my house, my table. The door creaked open 20 minutes later. Keys dropped into the bowl by the door. Then I heard Emily's voice, bright, careless, until she saw the papers I'd placed on the table. Emily's heels clicked sharp across the floor. "What the hell is this?" she barked, waving a piece of paper. "You can't do this!" I didn't flinch. I reached into the folder beside me and slid a plain white envelope across the table. "This," I said, "is your copy." She hesitated, then snatched it up and tore it open. Her eyes scanned the first document, the legal notice of lien, then the second. "What is this?" she asked, voice rising. I took another sip of coffee. "An invoice." She looked again. "Unlawful use of residence and attempted equity extraction. $47,500? That's ridiculous!" She spat. "You can't charge rent retroactively." "You never said—" "I never thought I'd have to," I said, setting the mug down. "But you tried to take something that didn't belong to you. That has a cost." Carter stood in the doorway, silent, pale. "You said it was a gift." Emily turned on him. "You said she was done with the house, that she wanted us settled." His jaw clenched, but he didn't say a word. "I gave you shelter," I said, looking at both of them now. "I paid the taxes. I kept the lights on. I left it all in your name for convenience while I traveled. And you used that to file a fraudulent transfer and apply for a loan against my equity." Emily's voice cracked. "It was a misunderstanding." "No," I said, "it was a choice." The room went still. No clinking dishes, no fake apologies. Carter stepped forward, voice low. "So what happens now?" "You start paying," I said, "or you start packing." I stood, gathering the rest of the papers into a neat stack. "I've already frozen the mortgage application. Any attempt to move forward will trigger legal escalation." Emily opened her mouth to protest again, but Carter reached out and touched her arm. "Stop," he said, barely above a whisper. I walked past them and down the hall to my room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. They'd heard me. Later that night, there was a soft knock on my door. I didn't answer right away. Eventually, Carter pushed it open and stepped inside like he used to when he was small and had a nightmare. But he didn't look scared now, just cornered. "Mom," he started, voice rough, "can we talk?" I stayed seated on the bed, arms folded. He sat in the desk chair across from me, shoulders slumped. "We were just trying to build a future," he said quietly. "It wasn't meant to hurt you." I stared at him. "But it did." He nodded, eyes on the floor. I let the silence hang until he finally looked up. "We thought you were done with the house. You were helping Aunt Joy, traveling more. Emily thought—" "I don't care what Emily thought," I said. "I care that you, my son, never asked." His throat bobbed. "I didn't think you'd react this way." "No," I said. "You didn't think I'd push back at all." He shifted in his seat. "I didn't mean to betray you. We've been struggling, and I thought this would give us a leg up." I leaned forward. "You want a leg up? Work, save, wait, like I did." He flinched. "I know you worked hard." "No, I don't think you do," I said. "Because if you did, you would have protected what I built instead of helping someone try to steal it." He was quiet for a long time. "I'm sorry," he finally said, but it came out soft, hollow. I looked at the man sitting across from me, the man I raised, who I thought knew better, and for the first time, I saw how much I'd shielded him from. "You can apologize," I said, "but you still have to pay." He nodded slowly, defeat settling over him like dust. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. "I didn't think it would get this far." "It got this far the moment you chose her comfort over my trust," I said. He left without another word. I stayed where I was until I heard their bedroom door close. Then I picked up the contract I drafted with Judith. 3 days later, they brought a lawyer. He wore a navy tie and a nervous smile, introducing himself as Darren from a firm downtown. Emily offered me coffee like we were about to chat about backyard landscaping. I declined. We sat at the dining table, my table, polished by my hands for over 2 decades. Judith had already prepared the contract. Clear terms, fixed monthly installments, interest included, non-negotiable clauses, a clause for default, a clause for lien renewal. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. Darren skimmed the pages, nodded along, and whispered something to Carter. Emily folded her arms. "So this is really happening?" I didn't respond. "You'd really make your own son pay back rent?" Still, I said nothing. I took out 2 pens and placed one in front of each of them. Emily's jaw clenched. Carter looked tired, older maybe. They both signed. Judith collected the papers, initialed each page, and gave me a nod. I nodded back. No handshakes, no thank yous. I stood and left the room without looking back. The silence that followed was the kind you could feel, thick, final. They didn't try to stop me. Back in my bedroom, I closed the door behind me and sat down, the folder resting on my lap. My name was printed in bold across the top. Legal owner. They could redecorate, repaint, rearrange, but now they knew exactly who this house belonged to and who would never be erased again. Later that night, I passed Carter in the hallway. He didn't speak, just nodded once. Respectful. Small progress, maybe. In the quiet that followed, I could finally hear myself think again. The weeks passed in quiet arrangements. One morning, I was folding laundry in the living room when Carter came in holding his mug. "Hey," he said lightly, trying for casual. "Do you still have the spare key to the garage?" "I do." He scratched the back of his neck. "Mind if we get a copy? Just in case anything comes up with the water heater or—" "There won't be another just in case," I said, folding a hand towel neatly in half. He paused, trying to decide whether to push further. "I'd just feel better if I had it on hand," he offered, softer now. I folded the last dishcloth and set it on the pile. "And I feel better keeping it with me." He gave a tight nod, then turned and walked away without another word. That afternoon, I changed the garage code. It took 5 minutes, just a few buttons and a new 6-digit number. Something only I would remember. The sound of the keypad beeping felt more final than the signing of the contract. I stood in the garage for a moment after the lock clicked shut. The air was cooler there, still. I looked at the shelves I'd built with Carter when he was 13. We'd spilled nails everywhere and laughed until we couldn't breathe. Back then, everything felt simple. I ran my hand along the old tool chest. Still mine, still untouched. 3 months to the day, the first full check arrived. Emily slid it across the counter without a word, her polished nails tapping once before letting go. I didn't open the envelope in front of her, just nodded and placed it in the drawer where the others had gone. The difference this time was the amount. Substantial, solid, real repayment, not a gesture. Later that evening, Carter showed up with 2 paper bags from the market. He didn't say much, just set them on the kitchen counter and started unloading. Eggs, bread, my favorite brand of coffee. No apologies, no explanations. That was fine with me. I took the envelope from earlier and walked it down the hallway to my filing cabinet. The lock clicked open easily. Inside, everything was in order. Contracts, notices, and the deed. Still in my name, still where it belonged. I placed the check in a new folder marked Repayments and slid it in beside the deed. 2 stories now stacked side by side, one of ownership, one of consequence. Then I made myself a cup of coffee. Outside, the sun had just begun to settle across the roofline. The air was soft, and the wind carried the faint hum of a neighbor's radio, playing something slow and familiar. I sat on the porch, the same one I'd sanded myself years ago, and let the mug warm my hands. No one came out to join me. No one needed to. This part was mine. The porch, the quiet, the simple steadiness of a house that now fully knew who it belonged to. From inside, I heard the faint shuffle of Carter's footsteps, a cupboard closing, a drawer sliding shut. Life continuing. But outside I stayed still. No fanfare, no forced forgiveness, just breath, just peace. And the knowledge that I hadn't just protected my house, I'd reclaimed my place inside.